Hi teacher friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sharon Cardos and I like to talk about all things that have to do with teaching, classroom management, and especially mathematics because math is my jam. But today, if this is the first time that you're joining us, we have a good topic to talk about today, and that is profanity in the classroom, especially middle school and high school classrooms. If you have been on a campus in America lately with middle school or high school students, you will know that profanity is rampant. So I believe there are at least two reasons why it is more prevalent today than in the past. And number one is just because our culture is changing. Back in the day when I was young, you couldn't hear curse words as often on the TV. You didn't hear curse words on the radio, in music. It just wasn't done. But nowadays, culture is entirely different, especially with social media. So it's just something that our students have grown up with, something they don't find all that unusual, and they don't really understand sometimes exactly what profanity is and is not. Because some words that I find to be profanity, they don't think it is. So it's one of those things that their parents maybe curse at home, and their parents are people that they look up to and they want to emulate. So it's just an accepted part of their everyday life. So it's definitely different than when we were younger. So reason number two that I think profanity is more prevalent today is just because of bullying. There's a lot of bullying on middle school and high school campuses, and one of the reasons that students may use a lot of profanity is because they don't want to be perceived as the weak one. They don't want to get picked on. It's a self-preservation technique, so they do a lot of posturing to appear tough. And one of the ways that they posture is by using a lot of swear words, a lot of profanity. Now, these may not be the only two reasons, culture and bullying. However, they are two of the most important ones in my opinion. So let's talk about some suggestions for how to handle it in your classroom. So we know that today students are probably not going to get suspended for swearing or cursing. It's just not like when we were younger. And when I say we're about swearing in the classroom or using profanity, I'm not talking about profanity directed at the teacher. I'm talking about just profanity that's in the classroom as students are having general conversation. Because if students are cursing directly at you, then that's a whole nother issue and needs to be taken way more seriously than what I'm talking about today. So what I'm talking about is just that formal versus informal register. So suggestion number one is that you explain to them, you show them the reason that we have the rule. And the reason that I generally give to students is because our whole purpose as a school and as a society is to prepare you to be part of the workforce. And I don't want you to get fired one day because you can't filter what's coming out of your mouth. You have to know when to turn it off. No matter whether you're a mechanic, a nurse, a doctor, whether you're working in a fast food restaurant, you're a waiter or a waitress, no one's boss is going to want them to curse around the customers, the clients, the patients, okay? Because they're going to lose business. So we want you to be able to keep your job, so you have to be able to have control and to be able to filter and know when it's appropriate and when it's not. And most of the students seem to really like that reason, seems to resonate with them and they get it. So suggestion number one, show them the reason behind the rule. Suggestion number two is that you create a professional environment in your classroom. And the number one way I do that is I don't curse in my classroom. I don't curse in my personal life, but I also don't curse in my classroom. Especially, and I know there are a lot of teachers who actually do curse in their classrooms and curse at their students on a daily basis. And it's just not okay. If we want students to behave in a certain way, we as adults have to model that good behavior and that acceptable behavior. And I know some teachers do it because they want to fit in, they want to be cool. Younger teachers, maybe they haven't quite, learned to turn certain things off yet, but you will. You'll get there. You'll start to see the reason behind it. So creating that professional environment in your classroom. And usually I just tell my students, when you walk through that magical doorway, you have to be able to turn it off. And most of my students understand and accept that. Now, that leads me to suggestion number 3. Don't ignore it, because it's gonna happen. Even after 30 years of teaching, I still have students who test me and who curse in my class, or they just forget and they're in conversation with someone and they curse, or maybe use other inappropriate language. And so generally what I do is I remind students, hey, you're in the classroom, and I like to say, use the term potty mouth, no potty mouth. And even when my students will mimic me or whatever, they'll say no potty mouth, and they'll start to tell each other after a while, hey, potty mouth, cut it out, and hey, I'm okay with that, because they know what my expectation is. So, if it's happening, when it happens, do not ignore it, because what's going to happen is the problem is going to get worse if you ignore it. I've been in observations in a lot of classrooms, and I have seen many teachers who have ignored it, and over time the problem just starts to get worse and worse. And there is nothing worse than having your principal come in to observe you, and you have students who are cursing. You're trying to get them to stop, but you haven't been trying to get them to stop all these months or weeks before, and the students are like, what? We do this all the time. Why today are you like, they will let your administration know. So you want to make sure that you don't ignore it. You want to have a plan in place, your progressive discipline plan, whatever it is. And if you don't have a progressive discipline plan yet, I do have a video about that. I'll link it down below. So definitely start to work your plan. I usually give my students a warning and say, hey, I don't want to hear that, please. This is a professional environment. And usually that's all it takes, is like one warning, and they'll say, sorry, Miss Cardo, sorry. And I just remind them, I'll know you're truly sorry because your behavior will change. Otherwise, sorry is just a word. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to ignore it. So suggestion number 1, show them the reason behind the rule. Suggestion number 2, you create that professional environment. You model the behavior that you expect to see. And number 3, don't ignore it when it does happen, because it is going to happen. Which brings me to my last suggestion, suggestion number 4, and that's to know your line. Where is your line? So for me, it's my little magical doorway. If I'm walking across campus and I'm going to the restroom, to the office, and I hear curse words going on around me because it's a middle school campus, I'm probably not going to say a whole lot unless the profanity is directed at me. Then that's a whole nother story. But if the kids are just in conversation with one another, I'm probably not going to say anything. Because number 1, I'm never going to get where I'm going, to the restroom, to the office, wherever. But number 2, that passing period time, that lunchtime, whatever, that's an informal situation. There's a difference between a formal register and an informal register. And, you kind of have to pick your battles. So that's my battle. That's my line. But you also want to know where your administration's line is. So make sure that, you've had that conversation with them. So it's going to happen. You just need a plan to deal with it. So if you watched all the way to the end and you found this video helpful, if you would like, and if you're interested in more videos, maybe hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And thanks for all you do. Thanks for being a teacher.